Gandalf the White, Merlin, Albus Dumbledore, Dr. Stephen Strange, and the Scarlet Witch, just to name a few powerful mages in pop culture. Today, you become the powerful mage in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. What's up YouTube? Zero here, and today I have an epic Spellshot Spore Warden build in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. In this video, I'll go through the skill allocation needed to become a powerful mage. Then I'll get into the stat allocation required for this build. Then I'll get into some more gameplay and I'll talk about why this build is absolutely epic. Stick around for the end of the video where I'll get into the equipment I'm utilizing and the pieces of equipment you absolutely need to make this build epic. And then I'll talk about some of the substitutions you can make if you don't have all of the pieces of equipment. Without further ado, let's get into the build. Since we're going with a spell shot, we're going to equip Ambihextrous. This is going to allow the Fate Maker to equip 2 spells at once. Of course, this is going to be at a cost of an action skill, but we're going to be focused on casting spells and controlling the battlefield. We're going to go into Spell Sniper, which is going to increase the spell critical hit chance by 60%. Of course, we have 2 spells, so both of those are going to be critical hitting a lot more. Then Magic Bullets. Portion of all increases to the Fate Maker's spells also applied to the gun. This is 45%. And the reload speed is going to be increased by 40% in Prestignation. So all 3 skills in the first row. Then Mage Armor. Whenever the Fate Maker gains a stack of spell weaving, a portion of his ward is restored. This is going to be absolutely epic for survivability on our spell shot. Then Font of Mana. The spell cooldown rate. Action skill, we don't have one, but the spell cooldown rate is increased by 20% so we could get our spells more often. High thread count, max spell weaving stacks are increased. This is going to be pretty important for dealing damage. And then in this row, Imbued Weapon. Whenever the Fate Maker casts a spell, his gun deals bonus damage of that spell's element for 8 seconds, and the bonus damage is 14%. Now we have Double Knot. Whenever the Fate Maker scores a critical hit with a spell, he deals 12% bonus gun damage, and then the Fate Maker gains increased gun damage per stack of spell weaving, and that's why we want to increase those spell weaving stacks. And Sever the Thread. Gun critical hits have a chance to instantly reset all spell cooldowns. Of course, this is a 15% chance, and we're using a lot of spells, so that's always nice. Now in the Spore Warden tree, we have gun damage is increased by 28%, and gun handling is increased by 35%. This is going to allow us to deal more damage. Then Bullseye gun critical hit chance and companion critical hit chance are both increased by 60%. Our Medicinal Mushroom, if the Fate Maker goes down into Save Your Soul, the mushroom is going to come and try and revive us. If this is successful, we're going to be dealing increased damage, and then Quiver of Holding. Plus 30% increased magazine size, and we regenerate ammunition over time, which is extremely nice, especially on guns that don't have a magazine size. So now that we've gone over our skills, let's get into the stats that you want to focus on. So Intelligence, we have 2 spells. We want our spell cooldown as quickly as possible. So increase your intelligence as much as possible so you can constantly cast your spells and control and deal damage around the battlefield. And then Wisdom. We're going to be dealing a lot of status effects as well on this build, and that's also going to coincide with some of the equipment we're using, but we want to deal status effects as much as possible. And the last stat, go into Strength. With our critical hit damage being increased, we're going to be critical hitting a lot, so we want the crit damage going as much as possible so we can deal damage around the battlefield. Now that we've gone through the skills and stats, let's get into some more gameplay and talk about the allocation and why this is an absolutely epic build. Let's start at the top of the spell shot tree where we have Sever the Thread. The gun critical hits have a 15% chance to instantly reset spell cooldowns. Now this works really well with our Bullseye in the Spore Warden tree where we get a plus 60% gun critical hit chance. The more critical hits we're getting, the more opportunity we have to instantly reset our spell cooldowns, allowing us to constantly be casting our spells. And this can allow us to control and dominate the battlefield with both our spells and our guns. Then also, we go down to Double Knot. Whenever the Fate Maker scores a critical hit with a spell, they deal 12% bonus gun damage of their gun's element. So now we're playing off of our spells getting critical hits, and we're bouncing back to our guns where we're dealing an extra bonus for gun damage. Well, that works really well with Eagle Eye of the Spore Warden tree, where we get plus 20% increased gun damage. So those two are bouncing off of each other as well. Now we also get 1 slot, 1 kill from our Spellshot tree, where we get the 4% gun damage per our stack of spell weaving. Well, that plays well off of our Spellshot high thread count, where we get the plus 3 max spell weaving stacks. So the more spell weaving stacks, the more gun damage we're going to be dealing, which is perfect for dealing a lot of damage with both our guns and our spells. This build is going to be focusing on damage output with both spells and guns. Now we have Imbued Weapon. Whenever the Fate Maker casts a spell, their guns deal 10% bonus damage of that spell's element. So now we're dealing even more damage with more elements around the battlefield. Now, what works really well with this build, a slight spoiler alert for our equipment, is the Cape of Tides. That's almost important, almost essential for this build. Cape of Tides is going to allow the Fate Maker to deal more lightning and frost damage on enemy. You actually have a 25% chance to soak an enemy, and every soaked enemy is going to take increased damage from lightning and frost damage. So this is going to be extremely important when we're dealing extra elemental damage, not just with the Cape of Tides, but also with our tree with Imbued Weapon. And we also have Double Knot, dealing that extra elemental damage. So that's extremely important as well, looking ahead into our equipment. Now, we don't have a lot in terms of defense, so let's talk about Mage Armor. Whenever the Fate Maker gains a stack of spell weaving, a portion of their ward is restored. This is going to be nice to increase the Fate Maker's survivability a little bit more. Because we don't have much in terms of healing, we're going to absolutely need Mage Armor so we can constantly get our ward back. We're constantly casting spells, which is giving us a stack of spell weaving, which is restoring a portion of our ward. Now, of course, because of that, because of Mage Armor, and because we're dealing a lot of damage with our spells, we absolutely need Font of Mana, which is going to increase our spell cooldown rate. Now, of course, we have Spell Sniper, which is increasing our spell critical hit chance, which actually plays very well with the rest of the build. Of course, we are casting our spells non-stop, so dealing the extra damage with the critical hits is nice. That plays very well with Double Knot that we have in this tree. So when we get the critical hit with the spell, we're dealing extra bonus gun damage of the gun's element. Now we also have our Prestignation. We're dealing a lot of damage with our guns, so that reload speed increase is going to be really nice. So getting that up to 40% is fantastic. Magic Bullets, we're focused on our spell damage, but every increase we have to our spell damage is also going to be applied to our guns, so our guns dealing more output. And then increasing our magazine size with Quiver of Holding is fantastic, so we don't have to reload as much. But we get that ammo regeneration and the increased magazine size, so we can constantly be shooting our enemies to make sure that we're constantly dealing our damage output. And last but absolutely not least is that Medicinal Mushroom. Again, I mentioned that we don't have a lot in terms of defense with our build, so when we do go down into save our soul, our mushroom is going to be there to help revive us. It's going to happen especially on the highest chaos levels, so it's nice to have that failsafe of our mushroom who's there who can revive us. So defensively, we don't have a lot on this build, but we do have enough With our damage output constantly dealing damage to enemies, we're not going to need a lot of defense, but we have it there in Medicinal Mushroom and our Mage Armor when we do need it. So that's a great balance where we're dealing a lot of damage output, but also have a little bit of defense. So now let's get into some of our equipment and talk about what works amazing with this build to complete the build and completely dominate our enemies. We don't have any increases to melee in our build, so the melee weapon isn't going to matter as much. Just choose your favorite. But let's get over to the bread and butter of the equipment. My first weapon, I have the Encapsulator, which is a Torgue Assault Rifle. If you can get it dealing dark magic damage, that's even more important. What's nice about this Torgue Assault Rifle is that sticky damage builds up over time on enemies, so you can deal even more damage. On top of that, I said we weren't that defensive on this build, so getting that health absorbed from the dark magic damage is going to be amazing. My second gun, I have the Skeet Prod. Even though this is a sniper rifle, it plays more like an assault rifle. And I mentioned earlier that we want to be dealing extra lightning damage, so this dealing lightning damage is perfect for the build. Its reload is insanely quick, and since it fires like an assault rifle, you're going to be spreading lightning damage around the battlefield like it's no man's business. Then I have the Rapscallion. This gun actually tears through enemies. I absolutely love it. If you don't have the Rapscallion, of course, the liquid cooling is going to be great for this build because it deals frost damage. So if you can't get the Rapscallion, liquid cooling is a nice substitute. And then I have the Spriggan. This is a Hyperius submachine gun that I have dealing frost damage. So put a submachine gun here that deals frost damage. Because we're focused on elemental damage on this build, you absolutely need a submachine gun that's dealing either lightning or frost damage. I love that Spriggan in that slot. So in my first ring, I just have one that's dealing extra gun damage because I'm focused on gun damage. If you can find one that deals even more gun damage, I'd recommend that, or another one that deals spell. My second one, I'm dealing spell damage, and I absolutely love this one, not just because it deals spell damage, but on killing an enemy, the ring's effectiveness is increased by 33% for 8 seconds. So remember the lethal catch, we're going to be increasing the effectiveness of our ring, making us deal more damage. I love the Spirit Rune as our shield, and the reason is because while standing still, gain 20% increased lightning damage, and ward regeneration delay is reduced to 0. 20% increased lightning damage is extremely important for this build because we're focused on dealing lightning damage, so that's absolutely important. I mentioned it earlier, but this is critical for the build, the Cape of Tides. The Cape of Tides, you get to soak enemies 1/4 of the time when you get a critical hit. Doing this allows the Fate Maker to deal increased lightning and frost damage to enemies. This build being a spell shot, you're dealing increased elemental damage. We already saw we increased the stat for elemental damage, so we want to be dealing lightning and frost damage non-stop to enemies, allowing us to tear through those enemies. So the Cape of Tides is extremely important for this. Now, again, I said we weren't very defensive on this build, so the Sacrificial Skeep is going to be imperative for this build as well. The Sacrificial Skeep, when health is below 50%, we summon a Sacrificial Skeep that takes the damage for us. So this is going to be extremely important to allow us to save ourselves a little bit more. And we combine that very well with the Encapsulator because we have that dark magic damage. When the Sacrificial Skeep sacrifices itself when we're below 50% health, we can regain some health with our dark magic gun. For our spells, the bread and butter, I have the Ramming Twister. What's nice about the Ramming Twister as the first spell is it deals both poison and cryo damage. On top of that, it's a twister. It can push lesser enemies away from the spell shot, allowing you to control the battlefield. And then second, I have the Buffmeister. What the Buffmeister is going to do is it's going to increase direct damage dealt. This one is lightning damage. So I can increase my lightning damage dealt, and all of my damage dealt it's extremely important to have a Buffmeister on this build so you're dealing more damage. It's absolutely imperative for a Buffmeister. The Ramming Twister, or the Twister in general, you can substitute out for one or another favorite spell that you may have. I prefer the Ramming Twister because you can push enemies away from the Fate Maker, as well as dealing that both lightning and poison damage, which is really nice. But you can substitute that out. Buffmeister is more important, so you can deal a lot more damage. And you can see me running through Lechance with the Rapscallion and my spells. So what's imperative for the equipment is the Cape of Tides. You absolutely need that so you can soak enemies and deal increased lightning and frost damage. You need spells that deal lightning and frost damage so you can deal extra damage to your enemies. I would recommend at least one gun with dark magic damage just so you can heal your health a little bit more. And what's also extremely important is that sacrificial skeep. We don't have a lot defensively, but the sacrificial skeep is going to give us the opportunity to heal ourselves up, or at least avoid a little bit of that enemy gunfire when our health drops below 50%. So that's extremely important as well. Again, some of the guns you can substitute out. We're more focused on our spells on this build than our guns, but make sure you have guns that are dealing at least a few that are dealing lightning and frost damage, and then you want one dealing dark magic damage so you can heal up your health. Let me know in the comments section what you think of this Spellshot build. Do you use a Spellshot build similar to this? Or is yours completely different? I'm curious to know in the comments section. I'm also curious to know in the comments section, who's your favorite wizard of all time? Mine, this is a tough choice, but I'd probably go with Doctor Strange. Let me know in the comments section who yours is. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more Tiny Tina's Wonderlands content. I do a bunch of other RPGs, so feel free to check those out as well. I hope you enjoy your day. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, peace.